budgeting for your teams, breaking into the industry, finding a job yourself. Every day it evolves. Something changes. A new platform got put out, a new, compliance controls there. Like there's so much that's happening that, the data can't keep up. So every time something's posted, I feel like it's outdated already. Okay? Doesn't mean it's not useful information. I just don't technically, share it on a day-to-day. I go with my experience of what I'm feeling in the jobs market, what I'm seeing with the people I'm speaking to every single day. And that's kind of where I come and share what I have. So what we'll explore is, like I said, job market, hottest jobs, how to take a look at it, how to job search, and really just set yourself apart. And then some of the trends and, different things that are happening, just evolving, changing on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I want to talk about today. If you have anything to share, an experience, something that triggers you, please raise your hand. Don't wait till the Q&A session. I want to make this as interactive because this is how you learn, is by the group of people here, right? Your experiences are going to help and support somebody else in their road and, path to what's on the next for their chapter. So here's some of the things where I want to discuss, like the hottest cybersecurity jobs for 2025 and 2026. The reason why I put this up here, right? And it's a pretty big list, okay? But this is where I see the trends happening. This is where I see companies hiring. This is where I'm placing professionals. So this is why I put these up there, because companies come to me and I see every single day what jobs are posted, what's not, right? I see what jobs are kind of being targeted for next year, right? And what jobs are like really active today, because there's just a lot of fluff. I know personally about 3 hiring managers right now that have jobs posted that aren't even approved, right? So it happens, and it is happening. And that's why I say the data that's out there, how accurate can that be, right? And that's just me. I'm one person. That's 3 people. And there's about 7 jobs total that are actively being posted that aren't even approved and are looked at for targeting like end of Q1 in 2026. So right then and there, I'm like, okay, imagine just like if you went around the room, how much fluff that is. So my recommendation is always looking to see what's happening in the market, right? So security engineering in general, cloud engineering, having that focus of cloud infrastructure is definitely big as we're seeing the evolution of more AI, more data, right? So people need to be hands-on technically. What I mean by that is hands-on keyboard, right? It's not just about being compliant and being, in an area of like technology is requiring us to do X, Y, Z, but we need to make sure that we're innovating. Okay, so when you're coming in and you're, looking to be like, well, what do I want to do, right? You want to enter in, you want to be a security analyst. That's awesome, right? Everyone's so worried. Is AI going to take away the security analyst job? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Is it going to level it down a little bit in the sense of like how many are out there? Yes, right? Because it's going to remove some of the tasks in the day-to-days. But what's going to happen is it's going to level up the people that are going in at the entry level point, right? So the key thing that I'm seeing is right here, like the threat, being able to hunt threats, actively like review, see what's going on, not just analyze logs. We're going to have technology that does that, right? And quite frankly, that's not what people are like, I want to do that for my living. I want to just look at logs all day, right? We don't want to do that. So that's kind of like the monotonous tasks that are being removed from the role. And it's allowing you to level up and do exactly what you're going to be doing in that position. And that's really seeking out what's in those logs, right? What's the deepness behind it? So when I say the hottest roles, it's really looking into where's the trend of technology, what's everyone trying to do? And every company is trying to do things cheaper, faster, more efficient, right? And What that does for us is it just makes it so we need to be in the market to do more architecture, more zero trust, right? A lot more applications, a lot more cloud environments. So really focusing on those specific technologies and in those specific areas as you're putting yourself in the position, what's my next career move? How do I want to break into the industry, okay? So I'll share these things with everyone in my slides if you want them in the future. I'll send them over to Jean, but it's pretty relevant, okay? GRC and compliance, I mean, it's a huge piece of what's happening. Right now, I'm seeing a lot, everything used to be very siloed, right? So IT, cybersecurity, GRC, privacy, they're all being smashed together. And they're like, whoa, we've got to be real friends now because everything is touching and everything is so important, right? So a CIO needs to be very well aware of what's happening here when they're looking at their future, right? And then a CISO needs to be well aware of why this is so important to a CIO, right? Because all of the technology that's coming out is really just pushing all of this information in one place at a rapid rate that no one knows what's going on, right? No one knows what's the next step for this. How do we protect our company? How do we grow our business? Let's make sure that we come together. So HIPAA, PCI, SOC 2, FedRAMP, I mean, companies have to have these now. There's no way around it. And it all depends on regulation, right? We also know, like, we all understand what HIPAA stands for. If you don't, let me know, we can talk offline, right? But those are things where I think it's important to say that compliance, GRC, privacy, they're not going anywhere. They're definitely a big push for people that understand privacy, right? And not just compliance. So looking into that is definitely going to be something that a lot of people breaking into the industry don't want to miss out on. And then this AI ML security. It's not something that's being taught, right? And that's what I'm going to get into. So keep track of what's happening here. As for security professionals, I work with tons of CISOs, right? I started working with certain CISOs back 15 years ago. They're looking for new jobs now. They've kind of been outdated, right? Everyone wants to talk about ageism or things happening at that level, right? That they've been a CISO for 20 years. And I think there's some instances, of course, right? But I think it's just that they haven't skilled up enough, right? The technology, things have moved so rapid that they're not where they need to be in order to get into these companies that are doing what they're doing. So my recommendation is doing the fractional stuff. Interim security leaders, coming in and specializing in what you know as a senior leader and saying, like, here's my expertise. Every company's going to need it, but they're going to need that and more. So being that kind of extra person that a technical CISO that's in a position, or the ones that are getting hired now, they want ones that are coming out of engineering backgrounds. They want ones that have coding. They want ones that have been an individual contributor and leader. They want innovators, right? Not roadblockers. And that's kind of unfortunately how they view certain senior leaders from, the start of 10 years ago when cybersecurity was first getting big. So here's some of the hiring, job searching trends. So there's definitely going to be a lot of changes in the way that you go and search for jobs. You're going to be tested. You're going to be tested in ways that you probably never have been before, right? It's not just going to be interview processes. You're not just going to have a Zoom call where you're going to talk to somebody. They're going to want to test your skills because of what's happening in fraudulent applications and resumes. People are creating themselves to be gurus when they're generalists. And that's what is happening on a day-to-day. In order to get out of that, they need to, what's happening? Take-home challenges, labs, Having those things in your background and being prepared for that and being open to it is a key factor in differentiating yourself from somebody else in the hiring process, right? Other applicants. They're going to definitely look at people that have portfolios first. So you've got to be putting stuff out there. You have to be an educator. You have to have something, something that's published, something you're working on, something that you're continuously, and not just certifications. Certifications are great. But 9 times out of 10, by the time you finish certification or they update the test, there's already stuff that's added to it, right? So they want to see that innovation. So having something where playbooks, detection content, doing anything that's like capture the flags or, putting research out there, like you have to be game changing for them to want to see what you're capable of, okay? A lot of stuff that's happening too is hybrid roles. Now, we used to think there was unicorns like 10 years ago in cybersecurity, right? And people wanting to fit 5 people in one. Now, it's really mushing skill sets where it's a lot of development and a lot of cybersecurity, right? It's a lot of coding, it's a lot of scripting, it's a lot of automation, and they need to have that like DevSecOps background, right? They really want people that can take information from areas and train it to ingest it in some place and organize it nicely and make it secure, right? That's like the biggest piece of what's happening. And then contract-based work is huge. So don't sleep on it, right? Contractors are like, I know everyone wants full-time, and I get that, right? The benefits of it are amazing. But if you're in the job market, you need to open yourself up to temporary work, right? Because what it's gonna do is it's just gonna add value to the project's experience you've had. And you can get paid really well on it, right? But that's what I'm gonna see probably, I'd say especially in the bigger companies. They're doing like segmentation stuff. So instead of building like a SOC team like that's like hundreds of people, they're like, oh, let me hire some contractors in. We seem to be going through a little bit of a struggle right now. Some new targets, let's tighten up on what we have within the company or wherever the threats are coming in, and let's like beef up our security operations, fix what we need to fix, and then we're gonna probably, lay some people off or contractors let them go or whatnot. So project-based work is absolutely a focus on every company's agenda on how to stay relevant and get up to the speed of where everyone else is, because that's what's happening right now. It's like you either step it up or you get left behind. And you have to avoid that. So in order as a professional to be amongst that, you need to do the same. So that means getting in front of things, getting on projects, learning new stuff, being able to be very transitional and quick on your feet, right? AI is automating everything, right? And that's something that everyone looks at, like, where is it taking away my job? Like, I'm a recruiter, right? So many companies right now don't even want to use us because they've got hundreds, thousands of applicants coming in. But what they're not getting is the skill. What they're not getting is the relationships. What they're not getting is like, hey, Joe, Adriana, right? I spoke to XYZ person like yesterday at a dinner, and he's got this and he's got that. At the end of the day, we hire for skills, but we primarily hire for people, relationships. We hire people we like, right? I mean, it's all about like the persona. I mean, I don't see the future ever being like, hey, this resume technical stack looks like this and this looks like this, and great, we're gonna hire to do the job and no one ever talks. I hope it never gets there, but that's kind of what they're trying to do. So I would look at it in my like industry, people are like, AI is taking our job. I'm like, no, it's not. What you need to do is you need to skill up. So I need to automate majority of the stuff that I would do on a day-to-day. I need to get out in front of people more, right? I need to have those relationships where people are remembering who I am, understanding what I offer, and introducing, right, and making recommendations. So all it is skilling up. And that's something, I'm not a technologist, right? So skilling up for you, you can ask me, I can't answer those questions for you, right? To the level that you need. But that's something that I would highly seek in your industry of like, where do you see the trends going? What can you do in order to take your skill set and amplify it? You have to look at your projection. You have to look at where you're starting and where you want to be in 6 months to a year, right? And you have to get yourself ahead of that. So you have to train, you have to be involved, you have to do more, right? To stay ahead and to stay relevant. So this is landing your next security role, right? So this is mid, senior, junior. It truly doesn't matter. What matters is it's hard right now. And I'm fully well aware that it's a challenge to get yourself in front of the right people, to submit multiple applications, to not hear back, to have everything that they say the job needs and it goes nowhere, right? I hear this on a day in and day out. Whether it be a CISO or someone just graduating college, everyone's feeling it, okay? So what we need to do is change the way that we're approaching it. So not just like, I would say, my main focus would be on this is like, just make sure that you're building the relationship and put yourself out there, right? So a lot of professionals over my career in the cybersecurity industry definitely have more of like an introverted type of personality, right? I guess maybe it's just the nature of it. I don't know the true reasoning why, but what I do recommend is working on getting that to be more of an extrovert in the sense of certain situations, not completely, but getting out, coming to events like this, having conversations, making sure that every person in this room, you shake their hand and they know what you do, right? And you know what they do. It's important to be aware of your surroundings. It's important to understand what other people are going through and to engage and share in that common, like, I guess, place of just uncertainty, right? But most of all, I think it's important for us to just put our voices out there, right? Put our voices out there. I'm looking, these are my skill sets, this is what's happening. Get out. You have to put a salesperson hat on right now. It's crazy, right? Because that's how it's going to make the whole differentiation of like, this is who I am, this is my skill set. Do you have a job for me, right? So with that being said, being in the community, I mean, I've said it enough, right? I think it's important to really just look at the whole in the future of like, it's not just your skill set as what gets you the job. It's like what you're bringing to the table. So if you're a person that's passionate about certain things, you have a home lab, you want to talk about that, right? You want to talk about what you're doing on your own time and research. And you might just want to actually go and do that for more of like what your work is. Okay, so maybe you have a skill set that is focused in this track here, but all your passions lay here and all the work you've been doing at home is focused in this area. Go for a job that does that. They want to see that, right? Because what's happening now is the skills that they need, people don't have. They're doing it kind of on this side, they're playing around with it, but they want that within their next career moves and the next hire that they have is that passion, that innovation, because we need to step it up. And that's kind of hands down what's changing. So leveling up the skills, right? I think for senior security professionals, it's definitely more of a challenge, right? I think entry-level people that are just graduating, they have a better understanding. They're just more tech savvy. They just got more experience in that fast pace, like innovation, things moving and changing, right? But for security professionals that have been doing something similar for so long, and don't really have the skills, or maybe weren't at the company that allowed the innovation. They didn't have a budget. They didn't have the skill. A lot of the reasons why I think senior leaders right now don't have the skill sets and are not skilled up to where they should be is because companies have failed them. Our businesses have failed our leaders to not be in the position to be in a successful place to be innovators because they were not given that ability to, or the permissions. So I blame a lot of that being skilled up, right? So if you are a business owner, the best thing that you can do is help to educate and grow your team, expand them, let them experience, try new things. Like, that is the biggest takeaway for any person that's in a leadership position or a company owner. But let's be honest, that doesn't mean anything. I could say everything till I'm blue in the face, right? But companies at the bottom, it's whatever money they can make and get it out of it as short money as possible without any issues or, complications. But I think, for instance, on, leveling up the skills, identity first security, right? So cloud, everything is really moving to the cloud. So really being focused there. But I am seeing on-prem coming back too, because I'm working with a lot of data center companies right now, right? So it's funny. They're like, everybody get the cloud. But now they're going to do a mix of on-prem, because no way can these massive amounts of data sit in the cloud and be secure, right? So these are areas that, looking into that too and being ahead of the game is super important, right? Seeing the future of where you see technology going and then pushing yourself to educate. Even if your day job doesn't offer it, do it on the side. Do it on the side, okay? I think the biggest piece, and I think for the audience here, is breaking into cybersecurity. This has been a challenge, I think, for any tech role, right? Coming out of school, coming out of college, having a degree, but not having that tangible experience, because they're like, oh, how do we know what they can even do? And again, that's what you do on your own. You got to get out there. There are so many platforms that you can share some amazing work that you do on your own, that you better get it out there, because that's going to put you in front of somebody that is going to say, whoa, this kid's smart. This person knows what the hell they're doing. They've got a good mindset. They've got a good thought track. Like, let's see what's up. That's where the future of this is going. And some people have done it and they're like, yeah, well, that doesn't work, right? It works when you put it together with everything else. You have, a GitHub, you have some, repertoire, something that's going on, right? You have something out there in a mix of, you're personable, you're going to get out and be in front of people, you're going to attend events, right? You're going to offer to speak. You're going to go speak to other college students. You're going to share maybe some of the work that you've been doing, right? Startups are huge right now. Getting in with one of them, right? Going to some of these meetings, like they have these innovation nights, they have these cool stuff. And I'm telling you, there is more money being thrown around with some of these ideas than I have ever seen before. I thought it was crazy before. Now, there is so much. So if you have an idea, don't sleep on it, because somebody else is going to bring it to the table. Put it out there.
I will say, just to add on to your home lab point, one thing that we ask people, like outside applicants, is describe your home lab. And it doesn't have to be hundreds or thousands of dollars thing. Like, I went and bought a used Cisco managed switch off eBay for $40, plugged it in and started playing with that. So
that's it. That's all it is.
We do, like, just describe, even if you don't have that, like, just describe your home lab.
Yeah. But it's even work that you would do in here, right? There's stuff that you have going on and programs and stuff that are running even in this center that I'm sure some of like what they find you can put out there, right? They're allowed to. Go ahead.
Other avenues, if you don't have the funds, you can do things like Hack the Box, Loot the Box. There's some free things out there to learn from. Obviously, you attend as many free webinars as you can find on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That'll kind of also keep in the loop and keep driving the passion forward, but, go towards those learning events that you kind of pique their interest, and you'll tend to absorb more of that than, hey, this job offers this much money, I'm gonna try to learn this. It's very hard to do something you're not interested in long term, right, and keep going with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the breaking into security, right? What about the folks that already went through an internship and right now are actually finishing or wrapping up their internship, they've been in it for 6 months or so, so they've had the training, they've had that hands-on experience, and they want to keep going forward. How do we align with their interest and the organization's interest? And is there a center or a platform or multiple platforms that they can go in and actually look for jobs and try to get themselves out there? I see this a lot on LinkedIn, for example, where we try to have folks engage with each other in order to get their name out there. But how do we get them in front of an employer that is willing to give them a chance? I feel like that might be a big breakdown, and some of these individuals might end up not going into cybersecurity, but just go get a tech job nonetheless, right? Because that's a skill set that they still own. So my thing is, how do we keep folks in cyber when there's so many little jobs out there for entry-level ones, even though they've been prepped and they're ready to work, whether that's contract or full-time?
I definitely have seen a lot of companies doing feeder programs, like where they're trying to develop certain like skill sets of, individuals and what they need. There isn't one answer to that, unfortunately. My biggest thing is like when you seek an internship, try to find a company that's willing to bring you on full-time after, right? Try to find a program that's willing to do that. And there are organizations out there that will put you to work, right? So I believe I don't know if it's I'll have to remember this guy's name because I met him out in New York. He has this startup. What it does is you find funding from a school, and the school actually pays your internship. So like your like salary. And so companies get to hire you and get your work for free, but the universities will pay for you to do their internship. Right? So there's like this company that kind of goes through and works through these grants, which I'll make sure to send to you, Gene, so you can send it out. I really don't have a solid answer for you for that, unfortunately.
I don't either, so just maybe someone else has any ideas.
That's what we want to put out there. It's I see the breakdown of it every day, right? I don't play enough in that area of it because no one will work with me for entry level. They're not going to pay my fee, right, to find an entry level. So I normally just pass people off. And if there's an entry level person looking for a role, like I'll try to help them build their resume up, their LinkedIn up. Like there's things that they can do to present themselves better. But the ones that I do see that get good opportunities and offers are at every single event I'm at. And I'm not joking. I would say that is probably the biggest game changer, is that students get to go to half of these events for free. Like majority of them. A lot of them they can't go or they don't get in because of, unfortunately, the whole dynamics of vendors and sponsors and paying and this, whatever. They need to have so many buyers at some, but there is a lot out there. My other recommendation is looking at it from a perspective of like, when you're in an internship, how can you position yourself to get that full-time role there or some experience? And then I also wouldn't shy away from taking just a tech job. I'd be strategic about taking a tech job into a company that develops and grows people within, right? Going after a large organization is usually the benefit of the doubt. Like that's where it's like, okay, entering into like an Apple or a Google or what, if you can get in at that entry level point, growing within, like they have programs for that. So really researching companies that do that work and build within is something that I would highly seek. And getting in at any entry level floor, whether it be tech or cyber, and just not losing your passion or your focus. That's it. Because not everybody just gets to step in. And that's another thing I see, right? I'm a SOC analyst. Well, you've had 3 months experience in a SOC analyst position. Could you just step in as a SOC analyst, right? And not be kind of handheld and matured and what have you. It's the expectations of people too, right? They want to go in and, oh, I was told that $85,000. And I'm like, well, they're only paying 55. So you got to be flexible. That's my other biggest thing. Flexible, 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 because the incomes for cybersecurity professionals have changed substantially, right? The levels of pay. So unfortunately, like I said, there's no right answer to that, but there's many. So I guess that's not a bad thing.
I would be careful with only remote. A lot of folks have asked for that. During COVID, people got used to working from home.
There's not a lot of progress in remote jobs.
Yeah.
You're just,
But
nobody sees you. You need to be there physically.
Yeah.
Always
Exactly.
hybrid.
So
I get it. Yeah.
once you're there, building those relationships is you're gonna do that face to face. And a lot of folks are, what I've seen at least, they tend not to, they're in their own little world. They're not really involved in beyond, or the companies also themselves have events. Like, you can offer to help out. You'll get your name out there just going to the local company events, and they see that you're a go-getter. Now they'll find a position for you, hopefully, if the one exists. But it's going outside of your comfort zone when you do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Another thing that I definitely have seen that people play around with is they'll work for free to prove themselves. And I've seen some entry-level people do that. Like, it's like a trial base. Like, test out my skill, see what I've got, right? Again, when I tell you, you got to put your sales hat on, I'm like not joking, right? And it's not just in the cybersecurity industry, it's like every industry now. It's no matter what's going on, it's like you've got to set yourself apart. So a lot of people going after what you're going after too. These are some programs that can help students break in. So these are some answers, like I said. I don't know 100%. These are just ones that I've heard from people that have used them, that have actually been able to successfully break it, right? This, I think, is important to, make sure, like, these local WESIS, DEFCON, B-Sides, those really small groups that really are like focused on bringing people and building them up, be a member of. Be a part of those, right?
I think like ISACA, ISC Squared has student memberships as well.
Mm-hmm.
The networking there.
I agree. You do not have to, to go to an ISC Squared event, you don't have to be like a member of ISC Squared, right? Students get to go for free. You don't need to have a CISSP. I think it's very important that you look at what's happening in your community. If you're in your job search and you're not looking at your meetups.com of what's happening local to you in the cybersecurity community, you're doing yourself a disservice. Okay? I think it's very important. And if you need support on, while you're shy or you have this, go with a buddy, right? Go with a friend, be peers, because what happens is people will come up to you, right? You'll have those conversations, people will engage, they'll interact. But this will definitely be something that will be sent out. And I definitely see like cyber defense. So anything with government, I do see government, especially in the cybersecurity space, is going to have a ton of money, because that is going to be the new type of warfare, like hands down, right? It's just starting. I mean, they're just saying like, you can put somebody that's like like I could probably hack into something now with what's out there. Really, right? It's like I can barely use Microsoft. But I bet you with the tools that they put out there, anyone can do anything. So what we're going to be up against is just a bunch of people trying to make money, just throwing stuff around. And you can buy a tool on the dark web that allows you to put in some infection in a system that can take something over, right? I mean, it's interesting. They're like $17. I don't know. I see so many of these things out there. I'm just like shocked. And it's just a matter of time. I mean, let's be honest, guys. Venmo went down yesterday. You couldn't transfer Venmo yesterday. Something happened there. I'm sorry. My conspiracy theory. But it's coming, right? Interactive, right? So it's build your 6-month career sprint, right? So pick a target. Focus on the target. Develop on the target. Know what you do. Don't go after the money, go after the passion. As he just said, like, you don't want to do something that you're not passionate about just because you're like, I can make $300-something thousand. And then everybody's also like, I want to be a CISO. It's like, actually, people don't want to be CISOs anymore. They want to be doers, right? They want to be in the mix and be relevant, stay in the mix. Not saying CISOs aren't needed anymore. Of course they are, right? But it's not the glorious end-all, be-all job that everyone feels is where your career needs to be, right? There's so much more out there that you can do. So get really focused on what you want. Like, you need to get this focus. Write it on paper. Get it down. This is your sprint. This is how all cycles in business work. Everyone has a sprint. Development, technology, everything. Everyone has a sprint. You need one for your career too, okay? These are just like different cyber job intel, hands-on learning labs, just different things that you can take for action items. My biggest thing is set yourself apart, get yourself out there, be on top of it, okay? Network, network, network. Make sure your LinkedIn's up to date. Connect with as many damn people as you possibly can every single week. That's what that platform is for. You don't need to know the person. You don't need to have met them before. It is a networking platform. Get to know them. Introduce yourself. Send a connection request. If they don't want to connect you, they're not using that platform appropriately themselves, right? You should be getting as many people connected as possible. Write content, be familiar, be alive, be active. And that's what I say.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Quick question for you. How do people work with cybersecurity recruiters?
So they just have to reach out. So with their skill sets, they just have to shoot an email. My information, I'll of course send it out. My team, you send in a resume, they have a platform. Basically, when a job comes, they pitch it out. Or if you're somebody that is, offering a skill set that's hot in the market right now, they're reversing it a little bit. Well, they'll seek jobs for you. So that's where we've had to skill up. I no longer just have a company come to me and say, hey, need you to hire me a security architect. Oh, great. Let me go find my security architects. No, companies don't do that anymore. I have to find a solid security architect, and then I'm going to pitch them out to all these jobs because they think they don't need me, but I'm going to prove to them they need me. So I had to completely change my entire process and skill. And that is exactly what you have to do for job searching. You can't just apply online and wait for people to get back to you because there's 3,000 resumes that just went to them. You got to find the person that's hiring for that role and figure out a way to get in front of them, whatever the way may be. Okay? Think outside the box. Make yourself relevant.
So thank you for that. Another question. There's all these websites we were referring to, right? Job boards where people go and apply, throw their resume out there, wait for recruiters to contact them through those boards, or apply for jobs that, you see some of the jobs that are out there in the market, they've been posted on and off for months, right? High frequency, high volume. Some of those jobs don't actually exist. They're vaporware, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Some of them exist. Some of them are fraudulent, right? So what's the strategy that you would recommend for navigating something like that?
So I think too, when you see a job coming up and down, there's multiple things. Like either it's just an influx of just garbage, right? Garbage in, garbage out, right? So I would reach out again, but not just applying, find the connection of the recruiter that's hiring for it, find the hiring manager on it, read the job description, Connect with other people that work there, right? If you're nervous about going to the CISO and say you're a security engineer with 2 years experience, LinkedIn to another security engineer that works at that company, say, hey, are they really hiring for this role? I'm interested. Mind throwing my resume in? Mind referring me over, right? Like, be uncomfortable. You have to get uncomfortable, right? You have to get yourself in a position that you're going to set us like outside, and you don't have to go direct to the HR person. You don't have to go direct to the hiring manager, but go to somebody there. See who you have connected. See who you've met in the past, like anything. And that's what I would do right now. I would go through all of your recent connections, make sure your LinkedIn's up to date, put as much information on there, because that's where cybersecurity recruiters are going to find you.
Does everyone have a LinkedIn profile here?
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, when should a cybersecurity student start looking or making themselves available on? No, not how, when. So like,
Yeah,
so like
it's hard to
freshman
say.
year, sophomore year.
Oh, no, I would start building yourself like right away. I would start building your network in your community if you want to break into cyber as a freshman. Like, start building your network community, start meeting people. You're a student in the industry, learn. Be out there educating yourself, being familiar with what's out there, the different types of positions. Just go and learn, because this is that type of industry. You're always going to be evolving. So,
Local user groups.
yes, yeah. Like I said, I can't say enough for the networking and the events like this. Like, if you leave here and you did not meet 1 or 2 new people, you're not doing yourself any good, right? You're really not.
Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time with us today.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
being out here.
I appreciate you.
Come up with stuff. with a Sentinel-1. So for those of you that aren't aware, we have a SOC here at our facility. Our SOC is run by Cybertrust Massachusetts, and it's a quasi-state agency. In that Cybertrust unit, they have students who are employed by Cybertrust to run the program, be analysts, and they help out local businesses, local municipalities, supporting that initiative. So Naveen is here from Sentinel-1, which is a product we use in the SOC services. He's going to talk about how AI is used in that cyber defense platform. So feel free to carry on with introductions if you like, and I'll hand it off to Naveen. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello again, Naveen Sharma from Sentinel-1. I've been around the block for a bit. It may not look like it, but I'm on my 13th company. I did use recruiters back in the day in the beginning, but once you get that experience, you're going to go through the process. They tend to reach out to you, right? Because you build a profile over time, and they'll see it on LinkedIn, right? As you get hired, and you're saying what your new accomplishments are, what job you're currently at, what your roles are, right? People tend to seek you out over time because now you obviously have the experience. What we're going to talk about today is more around, as a beginner, junior analyst, what can you do to level yourself up, right? All the stuff we were talking about before, breaking into the job market, right? Going into that entry-level position and then using that to elevate yourself, right? And once you have the experience, things tend to snowball a bit. There's going to be some forward-looking statements here, so we have to disclaimer the safe harbor portion of it. This just means that nothing's set in stone for things that are future projected numbers and outlooks. So what are we trying to address, right? AI is in here for a particular reason, not because the cybersecurity professional, the job was easy for them, right? It was very cumbersome. So when you're talking about something like increased complexities, right? Everybody had this defense in depth strategy. I have my perimeter layer, I have an endpoint strategy, I have segmentation, I deploy a lot of different software, security software out there. Each of those software or application packages that come along have their own way of logging, their own management, maintenance, care and feeding, right? So all of those things, contribute towards an operational overload, right? None of those logs are in the same format. There's no standard format everybody adheres to. And now all of a sudden you're worried about, hey, if I need to do something, I got to correlate this manually, right? So it becomes a bigger issue for people that are in the cybersecurity workforce. On top of that, what your adversaries are doing is they're using AI. They're using AI to develop AI malware, AI ransomware, right? And the sophistication level and the frequency is increasing. So imagine combating with manual tools and tasks with something that's coming at you at such a rapid pace, and the sophistication level out there has increased, right? At the end of the day, the analyst that's already there is already overloaded, right? Because of all those manual things that they're doing, they're overwhelmed, right? Also manual, detection, response, the whole thing, kind of trickles down the line. And obviously for the corporation side of it, their risk exposure is increasing, right? Because the longer it takes to detect and do something, the bigger the risk, right? And obviously delayed response. Obviously, if you're an analyst today and a junior analyst, your day is not fun, right? Because if I have to respond to an alert in a manual way, and I have to take time to triage, hunt, investigate, respond, remediate, and then at the end of that exercise, I'm supposed to come back with saying, how can we do this better, right? So prevent this in the future. So if they're under constant attack, all they're doing is going through this manual process all day long. So frustration level is an all-time high for these folks, right? As well as, when you're talking about job satisfaction, it was starting to diminish, right, down there. So our goal here is to make sure that we're elevating those junior folks and actually senior folks at the same time to be able to perform better, but also take some of the burden off of them so they have the ability to actually get away from the mundane stuff, right? Have some of this stuff, AI kind of streamline the process for you. I pulled some numbers, take this with a grain of salt, right? 2025 and looking beyond 2025, this, the skill gap or the workforce gap, right, that you see over here on 2025, and and this is probably global number, right? 5.5 million people employed in cybersecurity on the workforce on SOC analyst side, 4.8 million job openings. Some of those might be fictitious, but that number was growing for years and years in a row, right? That gap was getting stronger. What we're seeing, or what we're hoping with AI in 2025 and beyond is, hey, if we can up-level those junior level folks, right, and give them the skills to be able to effectively do their job, right, without burning them out, for the first time, we're hopefully projecting a drop, right, because we're enabling more people to join that workforce, produce senior level results using AI, right? The autonomous SOC maturity model is something that SentinelOne coined in 2024. It basically sets a place on where you are in your AI journey, right? How close you are from manual to fully autonomous. So when we started over here, level 0, you'll notice it's a single source, right? We used to take, if I have a firewall event, let me respond to the firewall and see what I can do. If I have an endpoint event, let me do something on the endpoint and fix it, right? So you were looking at a single source and responding to that single source and trying to fix the problem, right? It was like basically whack-a-mole at a very high level, right? And you see it's all manual investigation, remediation, response, right? Come level 1 and level 2, this is where most organizations are today that we see. That's when you started to say, okay, well, I can't look at this from every little security application standpoint. Let me bring all this data together and normalize the things, right? That's where you saw SIMs come about. Are you guys familiar with SIMs? I'm assuming, right? So SIMs came about to be able to, let me take all this data, but part of that meant that you had to normalize all the data, right? Something like a username could be represented differently between all different types of applications. Think Linux, Windows, routers, switches, firewalls, right? It's named user ID, SAM account name, this, that, the other thing, right? So there's a need for normalization when you're talking about these things, bring them in. That required its own skill set. SIMs are not easy to deploy, manage, care and feed of that. Not to mention they're very costly, right? Because now you're storing data from all these sources that already have that data, and you're bringing it to a new application like a SIM. And then that only helps you investigate and find out what's going on. You still have to go back and take manual steps, which in turn brought the SOAR platform out, which is security orchestration and automated response, which allowed you to then tie into the SIM, another advanced tool, another costly tool to come in, another advanced level degree needed basically to be able to use these tools in the care, feeding, maintenance of these things, right? So not really scalable, right? Because it required another senior level folk or a group of senior level folks to be able to manage these systems. So what we're seeing over here in level 2 is how can we take advantage and start getting away from some of that manual stuff, right? So when you look at machine learning algorithms for self-tuning, for detections, right? Now I'm not having to build my own query to see if this thing exists somewhere in my data, right? I'm starting to take advantage of threat intel feeds and then having this pick up the threat intel, use my telemetry, come back with, hey, this doesn't look right. As you go further down, you're using AI assistance, right? And we're gonna see a couple of use case scenarios of how we do that today. To help with the detection, help with the investigation, triage type of things, right? So I don't have to manually have to be a SQL expert to write a query or do those types of things, but I want to be able to use this as a learning aid, right? So I don't want to hide anything from you. So if you really want to digging into the weeds, and that's the type of passion you have, it allows you to do that. Level 3 is where we are now. So we're looking at obviously large language models, right? Taking all this data in, right? But you have to be able to process that data in an efficient manner, right? I don't want to write an advanced query that's looking over 3 weeks worth of data for all my infrastructure and then come back to me in 8 hours. Although we've had that happen with a legacy system and we compare ourselves, I'll talk about that later, right? But we're also starting to see agentic, right? We're going from generative to agentic. So generative is more like, let me assist, let me help with writing that query. Here's the results, here's a summary, right? you absorb it, and it's easier for them to absorb, like when you're talking about junior analysts and others, so you can quickly get to the root cause perhaps, or take recommended actions or actions you would take. But it doesn't, take the action for you on the generative side. Agentic starts to accelerate that. Let me take the low-hanging fruit. As an example, I have a user logged in from diverse geographic locations, one in Europe, one over here, right? But the user is a local user. They're not traveling. They're sitting in the office, right? But just from an AI perspective, that's not really possible. Why are they logged in from 2 different geographic locations? Let me just re-MFA them, right? So both sessions in this scenario go through our MFA process, and we validate that both sessions are valid, or one is not, right? In that scenario. Low-hanging fruit. I'm affecting a single user, and all I'm doing is re-MFAing them. When you're talking about the high-risk strategies on level 2, you're talking about you can possibly affect multiple people. So if I have to take a server offline, and it's a critical server, financial, HR, something else, that serves multiple people, now what it's doing is it's analyzing it, auto-investigating, bringing those things to the forefront, suggesting remediation paths. Here's all the data I compiled for you, without you having to manually even start that process, right? So we're kind of proactively doing a threat hunt, coming up with all the information and kind of packaging it nicely and handing it to that analyst, right? This gives them the ability to get a head start. So when you start talking about mean time to detect, MTTD, or you see MTTR, mean time to respond, right? We're shortening that gap, which also reduces risk for the organizations. When we get to level 4, right, now the agentic AI is now looking at adding more, right? This is going beyond 2025, right? We're looking to say, hey, we've learned enough, on how this thing functions, what the norm is, what we should be doing. You're looking at trillions of data points to kind of discern which is good, which is bad, right? Trained over time. And now I have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to take these actions on your behalf. But the human role is always required, right? For guidance and optimization, right? So everything that goes into it on the iterative loop of learning, there's human elements involved in making sure that it's still right? Your situations can change. You can introduce new applications, or different technology comes about, right? There's always going to be that loop of the human being in there. That's not to remove them. It's to make sure that they're involved in the process, but they're not doing the day-to-day mundane stuff. But they still need to understand, right? You still have to make a decision at some point. This is just going over generative versus agentic, right? Let me assist you with your work. Let me do the work with your oversight. That's a basic, the big difference, a high-level difference between the two. So when you're going to learn about AI, or you're learning about AI, right, it's going to be steps to get to agentic. And you'll see a lot of the stuff out there on LinkedIn is focusing more on agentic now, right? Getting more autonomy in there. Just if you're not familiar with SentinelOne, right? In 2013, we came out with the ransomware protection and automatic remediation, right? Because we saw that folks were kind of suffering with even though they had the endpoint tools and everything else in place, they were still getting infected, and it's massive, right? Bitcoins went up crazy. When you're talking about over here, though, on Windows system, which was unique to us, we had the ability, even during an infection, to roll it back. We can automate it, or you can point and click and do it, right? So it gives us the ability to protect certain areas of Windows that gave us the ability to actually just roll it back. So, where folks normally struggle with and ransomware infection or campaign is, once it hits, it is a process. Cyber insurance, DHS, you have to inform everybody, especially if you're in a government agency type of thing or funded by them, the ability to respond to that. And then you have everybody kind of hitting decks. You hope your backups are okay, and all sorts of other things need to happen, right? But that gave us the ability to take something that could take weeks and months or something like that and convert it down to minutes, right? Recovering an entire domain type of thing. And that was 12 years ago. 2023, big, large gap, right? Obviously, we've done other things, and there are additional innovations there. But in 2023, we started creating the agentic, it's a proprietary agentic AI framework, like everybody else has their own, to start doing things that, like multi-purpose. So not only am I looking at EDR data, but now I'm looking at, hey, can we get better? Can we get proactive? EDRs in essence are a response, right? Detection and response, which means it's reactive. We want to get proactive. How can we take this and have the agent do more? So a unified agent was introduced, and we're starting to take a look at how we, kind of deploy into that framework, taking into account of how they compromise identities prior to it, maybe bring that along the board. So as you start to see signs of somebody, doing something nefarious, we're looking at it from an early standpoint of people doing their reconnaissance. 2024, we introduced Purple AI. Purple AI is the whole gist of this presentation is how do we up-level that junior analyst? How do we make them feel comfortable, getting more out of folks while giving them time to gain the experience, right? Using the system itself. So it's not only helping them perform their work, but it's also helping train a mentality, training from the job, seeing how things are put together. So we don't hide anything with Purple, right? With the idea is you learn from it and gain that experience as you go forward. Obviously, more and more agentic capabilities, 2025 plus and beyond. So what are some of the things that we're trying to accomplish with Purple? So remember in the beginning, we had those challenges, right? Things are really complex. We want to make sure we accelerate mean time to response to get to that root cause faster. We want to be able to also take in third-party data, so not just SentinelOne. We want to bring other people along, right? Most security stacks in an organization are not just one vendor. They're multi-vendor. So we want to be able to, make the organization, the analyst smarter by being able to incorporate those types of things as well. So we're not just focused on what our outcome is, it's what the organization's outcome is, right? Because they have that stack. Obviously, we want to elevate the analyst. We need more in there, right? Grain of salt, right? Numbers, as we discussed. And then obviously we safeguard your data. So all this telemetry, right? You could have PII in there. You can have HIPAA in there, right? Depending on all the telemetry that gets collected. So we silo that data, and the only thing that goes in is threat intelligence, so you can cross-correlate. And the only other thing you could do is reach out to our knowledge base and ask, how do I do something, right? So we want to be, transparent, like make it easy as possible for these analysts to do their work. How does this work, right? How does this stack kind of put together? So you see at the top of all this is Purple AI, right? AI is looking across holistically over the entire stack. So now if you take a look at, I'm going to kind of circle here because the pointer won't work. Singularity AI SIM, that is a stack of multiple things in here, right? Purple's on top of it. So when you look at hyper automation or managed services, which is a 24/7 detection and response team that we have that augment, right, other SOCs or other organizations, because most folks don't have a 24/7 SOC team at work, right? So you're relying on third party or MDR services in this case to be able to assist there. The back end of it is a data lake that's highly performant, and we'll kind of cover how performant that is. And you'll notice we're taking an endpoint cloud, right? Because of number of, not just, your servers and containers and things like that. A lot of people went SaaS. Everything that you see in here is some cloud-based app in here, right? So clouds rely heavily upon, with application vendors out there, new application vendors come out there. It's a very easy game to get into, right? I don't have to spin up my own data center. I'm using other people's services. So it's an easy entry point to start doing those kind of things. So cloud is a big one in there. Now, you notice there's also third party in here, right? So the ability to take and normalize third party data and bring it in, right? That's what the operational center, security operations center is looking at, is I'm taking all this data in, normalize, and then putting AI on top of it. So it just kind of gives you a visual representation of how we're kind of envisioning bringing more items together, or applications or infrastructure. How does this work, right? At the center of it, you have to have something that's scalable, right? So if I'm taking in all these data points, telemetry from 10 years ago is not the same as telemetry today, right? Because when you introduce EDRs come with a massive amount of telemetry, right? Think about every single thing that happens on an endpoint. A process, a registry, a file being touched, a network connection, a DNS query, so on and so forth. Everything has a little record, right, that's coming in. And then now I'm adding third party, like a Windows event log or a Linux log or a Mac log, right? So I'm taking in a ton of data and the ability to store it and then query it very fast. So when you start looking at something like petabyte scale data lake, right? Trillions of data points. So you can kind of correlate, right? Neural networks and things like that. There's a ton of data there, and you're looking at algorithms matching on some trigger points. So it's super scalable. As an example, we had a POC that we were doing with a very large organization. We're still working through, going through it, but they had run the query and it came back in 45 minutes. And when we were on the call with them, we kind of shuddered a little bit, saying, why is it taking 45 minutes? We got all our experts on there, right? Saying, okay, we need to take a look at this. So we got on with the customer, went through the process, and we're like, we're asking questions about what query they ran for what time period, because you can run across, multiple time periods. And then they chuckled, because when they chuckled, we kind of got the idea something was a little different. So like, well, we ran this query on the POC with the same data as we ran on our legacy system, and the legacy system took 8 hours. You took 45 minutes, so that's why they chuckled. So highly performant. I think we went back and still narrowed down the time a little bit more, right? Because we weren't happy with 45 minutes. But you'll notice that we have managed detection and response and the customer community, and I'll touch upon the customer community as well. So everything that we're learning, we're still putting through humans, right, that are trained to do threat hunting. So we're making sure the system is responding in the way it should, also becoming smarter doing it, right? So it's an iterative loop, keeps going. Purple AI, obviously agentic AI, is now taking that agentic AI workflows that we have and automating those, you're right? You still need human insight or oversight on these things, right? So if I want to threat hunt, triage, investigate, or do those types of things, low-hanging fruit maybe kind of things, I can crawl into it and then eventually start running, right? The more and more of this stuff that we can take off the hands of the analyst and have the analyst focus on the higher level, right? Doesn't mean that the analyst doesn't understand. You still need to understand if this is right or wrong, right? You're the oversight, but it gives you time to get there, right? So that we can take junior analysts and bring them up. Obviously, there's also that hyper automation capability. So if I did want to, if I want to take an action, a repeatable action, right? Imagine if I had like 15,000 steps or 100 steps in an action, and now I want to be able to repeat it every time this event happens, right? What are the chances that everyone's going to do it right every time? Chances are there's going to be some fat fingering, or somebody misses a step, somebody's rushing, they're not in the right frame of mind because they're under stress, right? Taking that human element out, but still monitoring and make sure everything is working as it should in a repeatable fashion, whereas hyper automation. So not only are you going to get involved in looking at threats, how do you respond to threats? That's gonna be a big thing, right? It's not just detecting. So let's take a look at what Purple does, right? So if you're looking, remember when I said the community verdict and that iterative loop that we're looking at, right? In this case, it looked at an auto triage, said, hey, this alert has these points in here. So it summarizes it so you can easily understand from a ton of data down to why you might be interested, why this is bad, maybe some next steps that you might want to be concerned with. The other thing it's starting to do is it says, hey, based on a larger community, I see 1,000+ similar alerts in the larger community, right? That kind of match what you're seeing. And the community verdict over there is it's a true positive, not benign. 94% of the people responded to it as a threat. So if you're not 100% sure if this is good or bad, even after reading the summary and those kind of things, it starts to help the junior analysts or senior analysts kind of make up their mindset a little bit. Right? Hunting and investigation. So if you don't know where to start, there are tiles that are there for you. There's threat hunting and then there's support. So on the threat hunting side, right, it's natural language query. Means you can use, type it in English, ask a question, and it goes through the process, and we'll see what that process is, right? Because of the natural language, and I'm not a SQL or whatever expert to be able to put a query together, it starts becoming more efficient as far as investigations are concerned, right? Because I can ask in something that I'm comfortable with. Also, it starts now, if you're not a query expert, faster, identity threats. When you're starting to look at things going bad, right? The ability to have that perfect query to come back with, the answer or set of answers from a table and summarize things for you become a lot more important. So everything's just becoming faster to detect, faster to respond, right? The other thing that we found from SOC analysts is every time they do their investigation, guess what? They need to take notes because they're not in a silo. They have to share it with other folks, maybe their team members or management or somebody else, or that investigation is going for an extended period of time. You got to come back to it in a couple of days. Maybe you started it on Friday and you go back to it Monday, right? So there's various reasons why you should be taking notes if you're a cybersecurity analyst and you're doing threat hunting, right? So one of the things that we found was, well, why don't we make that easy for them? As soon as you start or ask a question or click on a tile, we're going to open up a notebook for you. Everything you're typing in, the queries that resulted, the results that they came back with, the summarizations, log all of it. So if I have to go back and look at it, I know exactly what I was thinking about what my mindset was, what I was doing, right? So it gives us the ability to do those things. And those notebooks, when I'm ready to share, I can rename and share it with the rest of the colleagues that have access to the system. So now all of a sudden, I'm able to share that knowledge out efficiently, and they can track and go through the process. So if you think about a junior analyst learning from a senior analyst, you can go multiple ways. If I'm a junior analyst and I go through the process, I can have a senior analyst validate, come back and say, hey, did you ask this? Did you try this? Right? If I'm a senior analyst and I go through a threat hunt, I can make it shareable, and junior analysts can also learn from why did I ask these questions, what were the results, and so on, right? So it's a learning aid as well, right? And obviously very useful because if I don't have to write things down or take screenshots and put them in a notepad or something like that, makes my life easier as well. Right? Natural language queries, the ability to write something or ask something in plain English in this case, right? And it goes and says, okay, you notice it created the query up top, came up with the table, it summarized the tabular data in this case, and it suggested follow-up questions. So as a junior analyst, if you don't know what to ask, right? Remember, it's a mindset, right? You're focused on getting to the root cause. So you don't want to go off a tangent like that squirrel moment, right? So you want to take, you want to use some of those questions to maybe guide, even, use those questions or guide yourself, going down a particular path. And like everything else, this is contextually aware. So whatever I typed in, the results I received, when I ask the next question, it assumes it's based on the results I received, right? So it's like a conversation, right? It's a back and forth. So you want to kind of stay on target. The other thing it does over here really well is, in certain types of data, I have the ability to summarize it so I can do things like pie charts, bar charts, right? So if I was creating a dashboard for a SOC where some SOCs have them up on their walls, right, to look for certain things, I can now assist that, engineer and analyst to be able to create customized dashboards, right? Because it's creating those Power Queries over here that I can now use, copy, and open in a different Power Query browser and bring it over. Native partner and log support. Obviously, we want to take in third-party data in a similar fashion and run Purple over it, right? So this way, if you can ask questions in Microsoft Event Logs or Office 365 or other types of things, it gives us the ability to enable them to, go further with, the entire security infrastructure, right? You want to be able to holistically search for these things. Support, it is tied to our knowledge base, so you can ask how-to questions. I'm just going to quickly go through some of these things, right? Multilingual, so obviously we deal with global companies out there, so English may not be their native language. If somebody's more comfortable in a different language, they have the ability to use that in this scenario and still work with Purple. Today the answers come back. It is early access, so that's part of it, right? Today, the answers do come back in English. You just say summarize in a different language, and it'll go and do that for you. There are other use cases as well. Have it write bash scripts, PowerShell scripts to do something. Elevate somebody in the ability to do those kind of things as well, right? Somebody, IDC did a study on, what does it mean after 4 months? And these are some of the numbers that it came back with, right? The ability to really prove our point, mean time to detect, respond, and so forth. And they quantified it in, funds and return on investment. right? Just the difference. We were talking about human level reasoning with agentic, the ability to, lightning fast queries, multiple third-party tools coming in, the ability for the MDR team and so on to, kind of participate in that iterative loop. And obviously we standardize everything in OCSF. So if you're not familiar, it's Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. That's how we normalize all that data. It's a standard out there as well. Our goal is to make that analyst happy, right? Their day-to-day should not be stressful. It's going to be, that's the job you're in, right? But how can we reduce that, right? So if we can make it very easy for them to do all those different things, makes their life a little easier. If you do want to learn more, you can actually, on Purple and other types of things that we're working on, you can either take the QR code or the s1.ai/purple website. We'll have more info. For you guys here, sure, no problem. For you guys here, there are local folks from SentinelOne. I'm somewhat local. I'm in New York, Long Island area, but you'll see Jim and Ed are local to New England. So I'm going to put their contact information up, bombard them, put them on LinkedIn, right? Start reaching out. Anybody else want to take a minute? Good. I think we're short on Q&A. Well, thank you. I tried to do the New England thing. Hopefully it came in.
Great, I appreciate that. I think we all do. I appreciate your view on AI and the use of cyber defense. Shows where the organizations are thinking, where they're headed. So while they're thinking of any questions they might have, I have one for you. AI is early right now, right? Everybody in AI it's still a maturing space. Right?
Yes.
It's very highly developed, highly volatile space. And in using AI, you get a lot of great assistance, great answers. I love the way you guys are using it for note keeping and for diligence, thinking about things maybe the agent hasn't thought of, the analyst hasn't thought of. That's fantastic. But I've had issues with the AI I've used, and I haven't used Purple AI. Caveat in that, have not used Purple AI. But in the other AI structures I've used, subscription models, you'll ask it to do something for you, and it comes back and gives you the whole script. I'm 100% sure on this. This is how you fix it.
Hallucinations.
And then you look at it and you're like, wait, that's not true at all. That's not even an option for me, right? And you say that to the AI, and the AI responds like, oh, okay, now I have it 100%. I was using this outdated model before this product, because it can't keep up with the software versioning of the knowledge bases, right? It has a challenge with what it's using as source data, right?
Yes.
It gets sort of poisoned a bit. So that's a challenge I see in the space right now, is cleaning all that up.
So there's a reason why we silo and protect your data. It's your telemetry with a moat around it with threat intel. So we don't go to external sources and start pulling in erroneous data to mix in there and come up with something, right? That's where you're going to run into issues. So in this scenario, when you're talking about cybersecurity, you want to make sure that when I ask a question, it's about my data, right? So there's a silo in place. Now, we've run across with other folks that are using it, and somebody gave us an example yesterday, which was funny and crazy at the same time, right? They actually, some lawyers are coming in, they're used to AI. Everyone coming out these days are using AI in different fashions. I mean, we're using it on our everyday devices or Alexas and those kind of things. But they looked for case study, and they got a case study. It was like in the 1950s, this happened, and were explaining to me, and the lawyer or the attorney or the paralegal did not check. They brought that to court, and they're like, this doesn't exist. And the case got thrown out. So it was like stupid stuff like that. You have to be, you don't, like when I go to use a general AI, you take it with a grain of salt. I don't know what data source is pulling from. Somebody could have made up a story, and now it's part of its source, and that story becomes real. It doesn't know if it's real or not. Human insight is always required, right? You want to make sure, that's what we always make sure it's accurate. Yeah, and even in our Purple AI side, you'll see a thumbs up, thumbs down type of thing, right? So if you don't agree with it, you can actually click on it and ask why, and somebody in the back end will look at it, make sure that it's the proper, response back. So we make sure we're part of that loop, but also we don't allow external sources to come in and do those things.
That's great. We here at the center, we have Immersive Labs is another product we utilize. They now have a separate carve out for AI learning right now. So students can learn about AI at the community college level, and a lot of our campuses are starting to assign classwork to that space. But I'm curious, from your perspective, having been in the industry, what do you consider like a good path forward for them, knowing that AI is something they'll have to know moving forward? What's a good pathway you would recommend from industry perspective for the students to facilitate, getting out and getting employed?
If you can, LinkedIn Learning, right? Sometimes I don't know if universities partner, but LinkedIn has a ton of AI courses that they also offer, like to up-level your knowledge, how AI could be used, basics to a little more, intermediate or advanced. And those courses are designed to be taken at your own pace online, type of thing. Just to use the education to your advantage. Obviously, take it in school. Obviously, you're learning in school, but augment it with other stuff as well. So if you have questions in school, you can ask, right? Hey, what about this? Is this correct or not? Right? There's a lot of things out there that you can use. And then the user groups, getting together, networking, always important because your experience may be different than somebody else's experience. So the ability to collaborate in those type of groups and ask questions there, when you start adding multiple sources like that, you're gonna increase your knowledge no matter what that scenario.
Thank you.
So just kind of like a follow-up to Gene's first question there. In one of your first slides, you showed like the 5 or 6 steps or scale.
The autonomous SOC model?
Yep. So, for example, we just wrapped up a POC for, we've been going on a while. 2 of my coworkers were sitting on that. And they said every single, tool they're being sold is like, oh, and it has AI.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, it's like, okay, but when can we say that we can trust it enough to not have to also do the work ourselves to make sure that it's pulling correctly? My actual question is like, when do you anticipate companies are going to be kind of comfortable going full on, like that level 6 or 5, whatever the highest one was?
So the level 4 is where, remember, the human oversight is always going to be there, right? Like I said, nothing is static, right? AI itself is developing. AI, there's security concerns with AI, right? So how do you control the population from using AI and not putting sensitive information in, right? We recently acquired a company to kind of handle those things, right? So it can automatically redact. It can control what users can use, which AI models, all sorts of things like that. Because what we're seeing is they don't understand that when you put something out there in a general AI, it's now general knowledge, right? Like that hallucination stuff. But now if I'm putting in employee data or something else in there, you want to be careful. So there's going to be, when you're talking about, when do you trust it? As far as the responses coming back, I think that'll grow over time, right? Once you see that the response is valid to, it was valid to whatever you maybe originally investigating or triaging, right? You'll put those 2 and 2 together. And the ability to interact with AI and saying, thumbs up, thumbs down thing, right? That's one of the reasons why we ask, because there's human insight always involved. So if you don't agree with something and you can't find it, by the way, we don't hide the details. All the data is still there. We may summarize it, but you see the individual events as part of that. So you can, decipher that as well. So we don't, going through the process, the idea is to elevate, but also educate that analyst and make sure the data that we're pulling, you can see the individual things, how we summarize. We do top talkers, those kind of things. So we try to give you as much information so you can make up your mind and if it's good or bad, and we'll have suggestions. We'll back those up with why we're seeing, creating those suggestions and so forth. So we don't ever want to take the human element out, right? We just want to speed things up.
And there wasn't any criticism of that.
Oh, no. But in general,
It was just funny because we were having this conversation last night where they're saying, every tool, it's like, well, it's going to save your analyst time. It's going to compile this data for you. But also you can't entirely trust it. So you still got to validate it. It's like, all right, well then what are we paying for? Is if we're still doing that same.
You may do it. So when you validate something, right? You may validate it, if you have 10 things you're doing and they're all similar, you validate all 10, or you validate the first 3 and they seem to be correct, or first 4, and then you trust it. Right? Eventually, there's going to be that break-even point where you start to trust that it's doing the right thing. So even if it fails 1 out of 100 times, right? The 99 times where it improved the experience, the mean time, reduced the risk, all those things, the one time may be a learning time, right, for it, because it may be something unique about it, right? So there's always that insight, but at one point you're going to start trusting it a bit more. And when that happens, that's when you start looking at other things, right? There's going to be that generative to agentic move, right, where you some level of autonomy is going to happen.
Any
Any
other
other?
questions? Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. I
and
appreciate
coming out
it.
today.
Yeah.
We can have the side conversation maybe out in the hallway, that'd be great. Yeah. That's because we have hot mics in the room and, it's distracting to the people listening online.
7 AI. I just got 130 million. 7 AI just got.
Great, thank you, everyone. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Jim Baker. Jim is local, he's out of Western Mass, and he has been in the industry for quite some time. He and I are old friends. He is a very good cybersecurity architect. He's a good leader, good policy manager. He is right now a CISO for a company called Cloud Defenders, along with a lot of other hats he wears. He's a very busy man. He took the time out of his day, like the other two wonderful speakers we had earlier today, to come and talk to us about how to secure remote workforce and endpoints. I just want to say before we get him going, I'd like to thank Workforce Development for sponsoring the luncheon they gave us today. It's very nice of Springfield Technical Community College. Glad it's our team to do so. But without further ado, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Jay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time. Busy day, so kind of decompressing a little bit. But again, my name's Jim Baker. I actually live locally to Western Mass, but most of my experiences come elsewhere in some global companies and east of the state. And the AI conversation definitely would love to chime in that sometime. So, I've seen already some people hit me up on LinkedIn. So if you guys want to chat about that, I'm available. So Cloud Defenders Inc. It's a small consultancy, pretty much specializing in security architecture, cloud security architecture, and part of that now is kind of the secure remote workforce, right? Thank you, COVID. Thank you, cloud. Thank you, cost of gas. Number of things that now have companies saying, yeah, you can be as productive in your home as you are in the office. The only thing I heard complaints about is emerging technologies, like emerging think tanks. That's a little harder to do remote-wise in some executives' opinions, but for the most part, cost of buildings, cost of commutes, cost of being in the city has been to a point where it's just cost efficient for people to work remote. And kind of with that said, right, about 80% of SMBs now support hybrid or fully remote teams. But what does that do? Yes, it increases flexibility, but it also increases your attack vector, right? Computers aren't sitting on somebody's desk. They're brought home. They're in Starbucks. They're at your house. Your kid gets on them. They download, songs. I would say LimeWire, but that would be dating myself a little bit, right? They're watching TikTok. They're on Facebook. They're like, they're doing a lot of stuff. And now those threats now follow users across every device, right? Your Apple ID is the same. A number of now AI products are the same, where you're using an AI product on your phone, but then also on your work device and on your home laptop. This has been more like it extends beyond the office perimeter, and that's been a while now, right? That's not just, the invention of cloud and virtualization and such. It has extended out past the firewall for many years now. And then what's the challenges, right? And this has also been an issue, right? Insecure home Wi-Fi, personal devices, Starbucks, everybody. This is nothing new, I would hope, to anybody here, right? Of all the issues of people working in multiple locations, right? Shadow IT, that's nothing new, right? If we're using Dropbox, a number of platforms that were not authorized by the company. and they were getting their own subscriptions to something like Dropbox. So what does Dropbox do? They decide to walk in to your CISO or your CEO and say, hey, look at how many people in your company, because they use their corporate email address as their login, have personal accounts on Dropbox. What are they putting in there? So they did this to build market share, to get customers, to scare you, to create FUD, to get them to sign up for a business plan so you can limit what they do, right? And now AI, right? What company information are people putting in AI? There was a discussion earlier about when can we trust AI? Well, as security professionals, you want to be involved in all AI discussions. So not only what kind of data are you using to train your models, but where's your data source coming from? Is it private? Is it public? I mean, you could see a data source and say, yep, that's good, that's good, but you put them together and you put it into an AI app, and all of a sudden you could have sensitive information, right? Hey, I looked at that data source, it was fine, this one's fine, but you put it together and now it's got names, addresses, social security numbers, because multiple, each lake or data source you pulled from has some kind of sensitive information, or puts it together and creates sensitive information, right? And then when you're talking about small and medium-sized companies, of course, phishing and social engineering, that doesn't change. That's internal, that's external, that's with AI. It's becoming harder and harder for people to recognize phishing scams. Before, my training for security awareness training for phishing used to be look for misspelled words, look for improper, grammar, hover over this link. Hovering over the link is still but improper grammar and spelling mistakes and all of that has gotten much better with AI. And the attackers are becoming more scary. Increased patching or inconsistent patching in configurations, right? And somebody's at home and they don't come in the office and you don't have the way to patch their systems consistently. So they're sitting there with, possible OSs with years of outdated patching or lack of patching. I would say applications, but I don't know. Anybody using an application and not using a SaaS right now? Exactly. So, and lack of centralized visibility. One of them being some products that were already discussed, right? Having those products to be able to see all of your devices. So what are some of the modern frameworks, right? And zero trust principles it's kind of been the buzzword, right? Cloud was buzzword. There was a joke where every time somebody mentioned cloud, a kitten would die or something. It was, kind of funny. But this year, beginning of this year and end of last year, right? Zero trust principles. I wouldn't say, I don't believe in zero trust 100%. There's no end. There will never be zero trust, but the goal is to get as close to zero trust as possible. And having remote workers makes it harder, right? Having lack of security professionals make it harder. What has helped is some of the MSSPs or MSPs, whatever you want to call them, have tools like SentinelOne and use those with their customers. So if you're a small or medium-sized company and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on products, MSPs now carry a lot of these products that can be used, right? Least privileged access, limiting access, and we'll go over limiting access to your end users' laptops. Does it create a lot of phone calls? Yes. I can't set up my printer. I can't do my job. Sales guys complain all the time. I need to set up my printer. I can't, on a Saturday, and I can't call the help desk. And assume you've always been breached, right? It's not when you get breached. It's not if you get breached, it's more of when you get breached and what kind of controls you have in place to limit that breach. And right now, with work from home, your laptops are vulnerable. You don't have probably that ability to have a vision into everything that you do, especially in a small and medium-sized company where funds are lacking, or they're like, we can't afford that, right? And how do you do this, right? Strong identity access management. That's not just for remote workers. That's for everybody. That's for cloud. That's for everything. ID, access management should be almost number one on the list. Endpoint protection and hardening, secure connectivity, continuous monitoring. Hard for small and medium-sized companies. I live in Western Mass. I have a couple customers in Western Mass, and a lot of that conversation is, people are afraid of the big ticket items. They're afraid of the price tag. They're afraid of what's it going to cost. They haven't budgeted for it, and there are companies like, I can't say the names, but there's a construction company where the intern clicked on malware and now infected the rest of the companies, and they're like, what do we do? We're a construction company. They had an MSP, and the MSP could only help them so much, and they have to bring someone else in. But where do you go from there? You just got compromised. It's going to cost you thousands of dollars to clean this up. Where do we go from here? And sometimes the owners of these small companies doesn't like the answer. The answer is hire somebody like me to manage your MSP, to make sure the security controls are in place, and here's how much it's going to cost. And their mouth drops, and then they make decisions based on the company, not always what's best for the company. So again, some of these are, yes, they are modern, and some of them may be a little difficult for small and medium-sized companies, but anytime you can have single sign-on for all applications, the less passwords you have, the better off you are, right? Multi-factor authentication, that's easy in today's world with all the ways, all the cloud providers offering multi-factor authentication. And I'm pretty sure everybody in here has a smartphone. I'm sure everybody probably has Google Auth or one of the authentications on their phones. Easy way. Passwordless is almost a four-letter word I've seen in larger companies. We can't do that, right? Now, before it was the tokens, right? Who was it? Had the tokens where the number would keep crossing, and you would RSA tokens, right? And you'd plug it in based on that. Now it's the FIDO2 keys are preferred, right? If you're a mature small to medium-sized company, and you're able to communicate the need for it, it reduces. I wouldn't say it takes away from email compromise, but it makes it a lot harder. But in the organizations I've been in and where we have talked about passwordless, it's like you just swore at somebody. We can't do that, right? And that includes the CISO of the organization, because they grew up in a way. It was like when I started doing cloud security, traditional CISOs and security professionals talk about air gap. No, we have to have air gap. We can't have systems, right? Compliance had to play catch up. PCI always had the idea where each system had one responsibility. This is your access. This is your FIM product, whatever. And now with virtualization, it's one system with virtual environments inside. How do we deal with that? We can't have all these multiple VMs with multiple jobs, because we're still on one system. I mean, before they went to the cloud, they're still on one server with multiple servers on there, right? Conditional access policy. If people don't need access on weekends, don't give them access. If you have contract personnel, and they don't need access at certain times, remove their access. All of this can be automated. It doesn't need to be a manual process. And, and the outcome of this is possibly a 90% credential-based attacks, right? With the FIDO 2 keys, a lot of that, it can take up 90% of credential-based attacks. I forgot the name of the company, was, basically talking about credential attacking and how just going to websites can have your token stolen and having the ability of somebody being able to log into your cloud infrastructure as you. Some of this I would hope would be pretty standard for most companies, or at least security professionals, being able to communicate to executive leadership the need for some of this, but standardizing on an OS and configuration. A lot of companies just buy laptops on sale. Oh, those Dells are on sale, let's get those. Well, now you have this Dell, that Dell. When I worked for Bose doing desktop support, they would buy all the same laptops, no matter what. And then they had people developing OSs and using Ghost to basically image all of them. And you, as a desktop support professional, you went there. If you couldn't fix that in 15 minutes, you wiped it. You threw the CD and the CD-ROM, and you pretty much wiped the computer clean. And it was a policy that you never stored anything on your PCs because it could be gone. I don't know if you want to go that far with standardizing OS and configurations, but it's definitely a good practice, right? NDM and EMM solutions, number of them up there, and usually now your MSPs and your MSPs have these technologies, and they're not resellers, but obviously your price goes up when you're using these MSPs if you want them to manage your devices for them. Enforced disk encryption. Now, this is, some people say, well, there's a 5% chance that you could corrupt your laptop. And they're right. Out of 100 laptops, more than likely you're going to have 5 of them, become unusable because the encryption has screwed up your hard drive. So basically, make sure people's stuff is not on them, and if possible, yes, I would recommend, encryption. BitLocker, File Vault, they're all inexpensive, but it takes the time to do it. Mandate security locks and inactivity timeouts. Prevent local admin, right? That is usually the biggest argument, because that sales guy complains, I'm losing customers. I can't get business because I can't load, put a printer on my system or a fax machine. Automatic patching of OS applications in browsers. Hopefully that's pretty understandable. So replace, hopefully everybody understands this, what old antivirus was, signature-based antivirus. There was Virus Total. Anybody use Virus Total in the day? Oh, guess what? So did the hackers. Hey, we're gonna develop this, virus, and let's see who can detect it and who can't. Well, if they got a 80 or 70 or 80% success getting past most of your semantics and your McAfee's, then they're like, send it out. We're gonna get everybody who doesn't have those, we're gonna be successful. Now AI-driven threat detection, right? But again, you still need a human on the other side to validate some of this stuff. Behavioral analysis and signature detection. Geolocation, right? You have no customers in Russia, China, block them. Don't allow access to any of your devices. If you have some of the firewall, next generation firewalls that have or WAFs that have this detection, that have the ability to say, yeah, this traffic's coming from this country. We have no customers, we have no business there. Don't even allow them through the gates, right? When you start doing like what's called impossible travel, that can get a little tricky when you start using VPNs and stuff, right? All of a sudden an IP changes and you're in, I'm in Springfield, and then I access my, my company resources, and then I say, oh, I didn't turn on my VPN or whatever. And then also I turn on my VPN, and all of a sudden now I'm blocked. Why? Because that IP address that they now see might be in Texas, California, Florida. I didn't get into any one of those locations in a matter of 10 minutes to an hour. So all of a sudden you're either setting up a red flag on you, or you're actually getting blocked from the network, depending on how your policies, right? Remote isolation, quarantine capabilities. I mean, everybody probably did that when you were in the office. Even more important now, right? Recommended vendors, Sentinel-1, CrowdStrike, unless you're on Windows. No, joke. Microsoft Defender, Sophos. Reduce downtime, faster, containment, right? Stuff that you need to speak with senior management and the reasons why you're asking for all of this. This is all great, but if you can't convince senior management, CEO, board of directors, if you have them in a small and medium-sized customers, it's all these technologies are not going to help you unless you can pay for it or get the bandwidth to install some of it, because some of it is free with certain technologies. If you're on O365 and you have the licensing, you can do conditional access without spending any money. It's basically somebody configuring it and then possibly answering the phone if somebody has a problem. Again, more, encrypted access to corporate resources, zero trust networking, right? VPNs, I'm hoping will be gone, and the ZTNA, continuous encryption, continuous connectivity. I've been at companies. I attend school at Boston Law, and they still have a VPN. So in order for me to get to my next class or book my next or sign up for my next class, I have to be on their VPN. Segmentation, application level access, right? And now in application level access, I should have put SaaS level access, right? What access do you have in your SaaS applications? Zero trust networking, some of the other stuff is cloud security broker. Microsoft gives theirs away if you have, I think, E5 licensing. If you've spent the money for E5 licensing on Microsoft, they'll give you your CASB. But who's setting it up, right? Who's the one managing it? Not only, it might be free or you're already paying for it, but who's setting it up, right? And now with that CASB, you have control of your, of who's accessing your cloud, your SaaS resources, what they're doing, etc. I think Salesforce charges 50 grand a year for their internal CASB. So you can determine who logged in, what they did, have that vision that you need into those resources. And here's the one that's kind of been going on for a lot longer before remote, right? Required device health checks before connectivity, right? That I can't even remember what year it was, but when they were putting the software on and you went to a DMZ and it would say, hey, your antivirus is out of date, you need to update, and in some cases companies turned it off because it was too much of a hassle. They couldn't get the business. And all that means is the security professionals or IT that did it didn't know how to properly configure it and get it to work correctly, or they had devices that were so old that they probably couldn't update those. A number of reasons. So some of the other stuff, and again, I've worked with a lot of small and medium companies, and I try to integrate some of this with some success and some not so success. Implement SaaS access governance, right? What SaaS products you can use, what you can't, right? Restrict data sharing outside the organization. I go back to Dropbox, right? And now AI tools, people putting sensitive information in AI tools. And if you don't have governance over it, you're putting it into ChatGPT without, without the proper controls or an enterprise solution, then you're providing them with information. If you do sign up for an AI type research, right? Click on, they're not allowed to store that information, whether you're putting it in or not. Securing baseline across Microsoft 365 or Google. I mean, almost everybody I know workplace, it's Slack or Teams. Anybody doing anything outside of Slack or Teams? No hands. So it's Slack or Teams, right? It's like iPhones or Androids. Most techies, most geeks want Androids because they can jailbreak them, they can put applications, they can do a lot more with them, and almost everybody else would rather have an iPhone. It just depends where you set. Same with Microsoft 365 or Slack. You want multiple channels, communication, groups, which is a little more, configurable in Slack than it is in Teams. It just depends on the organization. But either way, you need to have a vision in what's going on in those environments in order to properly protect yourself. If that hasn't changed, and I don't think will ever change, if that's new to you, I don't know what to say. Email is the number one, right? Your phishing attempts, is just getting, that's the number one. That won't go away ever. I don't think. Advanced phishing protections, right? There's now companies out there that will block Iron Eagle. There's a couple out there that will, once they see a certain phishing email, can block it throughout the rest of the organization. Phishing button, right? Is phishing, press on this button, and that goes along with what we're going to talk about with education, right? Banner alerts for external senders, DMARC, DKIM, SPF, property configuration. This is one thing that a lot of small companies don't understand. Why? Or if you work for a company that does a lot of marketing for other companies, or people do marketing for you, you've authorized these companies to send stuff out as you. That's an additional risk, right? Because you've given them permission to use your brand, your domain name to send out emails. So the risk right there, that can be tricky, right? I mean, none of this that I'm telling you, I hope you understand, is not foolproof, and it's not for everybody. There's situations where you have to let someone else, you have to, your DMARC and your DKIM and your FPF may not be completely locked down because you have situations where other people are doing marketing for you and need to send out emails. Train users to identify phishing, right? And I think, I don't know, how many people use No before? No? What other tools do you use for training?
Some internal stuff.
So mostly they pay somebody to create a internal security awareness stack. Mostly everybody I know now, thanks Kevin McNick for promoting this, but No before, right? They took them, probably one of the most known hackers in the world, and how did he become good other than possibly going to jail? Was make him the face of the company. So it's probably the most used security awareness platform that I'm aware of. and can give you that opportunity to both click on phishing emails, send them to a central location so they can be investigated, right? The use of cloud storage with built-in encryption, restrict local storage when possible, classifying labeled sensitive data, right? This, again, for big companies, this is a big problem. For small companies, it's a big problem, right? How do you do labeling of that data? How do you, it takes technology, it takes DLP technology, it takes security professionals. So I get this presentation is about how to secure the modern work environment, but I also understand small and medium-sized companies, especially in locations that are not in, more well-to-do areas of the limitations of finance and people to do this stuff, right? But some of the stuff like implementing secure file sharing solutions, that doesn't cost you any money. That's people and somebody to manage it, right? Somebody to know it's a problem, manage it, and implement it. What should training cover, right? Phishing and social engineering. I still say password hygiene because I don't know how many companies are actually going to go to that zero, to that passwordless environment. Secure home network practices, physical device security, reporting suspicious activity, at least quarterly in micro modules, right? So I've been in, traditional companies or companies like, tool makers, stuff like that, where have used technology and it can be all automated. I mean, you can set up your whole security awareness program in like a couple hours at a reduced cost and not have to worry about it. The only thing you have to worry about is people not taking the training and then getting on them to take the training and pass it and actually pass it. Right? And here are the policies, right? If you're now in accounting, right? I think accounting companies, accountants now have to have a security program. You don't even have to prove it at this moment. You basically, if somebody who's doing your taxes, before they can get their ability to do your taxes for that year, they have to click on, we have a security program. And we have written security policies and procedures. Do they? The account, and I think it depends on how many customers you have. I've had some accounting firms recently come ask me for their help because they know if something does happen, somebody's going to come knocking on the door, and if they didn't do their due diligence, their fines are going to be, a lot higher than if they actually had the policies and procedures in place, right? More than likely, BYOD. Very few companies now that I've seen have purchased phones for their employees. Some of them are even saying use your own laptop, which I don't know. Remote access guidelines, incident response reporting, data handling and encryption requirements, and mandatory security configuration requirements, right? Those should be some of the policies. Acceptable use policy is first, right? Because, and again, I've worked with a lot of small companies and, I've known my employees for 20 years. It's my brother-in-law, it's my sister-in-law. One organization said it's my ex-husband and his, like, if somebody does something that they're not supposed to do, surfing porn, gambling sites, pull down malware because they went to sites they weren't supposed to, could you lay them off? Could you punish them? Probably in a roundabout way. You could probably find something, but it's not going to be for that without an acceptable use policy and without them signing it, saying that you understand these policies and procedures and you will abide by them, or the consequences could be being fired, right? So acceptable use policy, you can use AI and write an acceptable use policy in 5 minutes and almost be perfect. So, and have people sign it. It's just it gives It's not going to protect you. It's not going to protect ransomware. It's not going to protect you from a hacker, but it will protect you from possibly legally protect you from employees from doing the wrong things and having an avenue of removing that person or some kind of punishment. Some of the things you need to do probably is provide an easy channels for reporting incidences. That should come in your policies in your training. How do people report? Who do they report to if there is somebody to report to? Remote isolation compromise from endpoints, being able to block them from the network, right? With the zero trust, yes, there's a lot of authentications, a lot of stuff in the background, but it's not you logging into a VPN. It's turned on as you turn on your laptop. And hopefully with the right, zero trust, that it won't, if your system gets compromised, it's not going to compromise other stuff, but you never know. Cloud-based logging or remote visibility, playbooks. Again, some of these small, medium-sized companies aren't writing playbooks for, incident response, like what happens if you get malware. Even the larger companies, I think, struggle with some of this. So lost and stolen devices, malware, phishing, unauthorized access, incident response. I don't know about once a year definitely, but twice a year in some form, and actually have somebody as an incident response, right? There are companies out there, I know they're not cheap, out there that will do incident response for you, will do forensics. Laws are coming up to speed on some of this, and at some point, what's helped me sometimes in organizations and say, hey, you have HIPAA, you have to do this. You have PCI, you have to do this. You have GLBA because you're a financial institution. It's a must. If you don't, you're a violation. And if you're not doing it, I'm sure you can get away with it for years, but at some point, if something happens, that fine, that, is going to be much higher if you're not doing your due diligence. Right? And it comes down to this, executive summaries, right? Talking to the CEO, talking to the board, talking to senior management. Why are you asking for some or all of what I just talked about, right? Explain to them that the remote work, right, increases attack surfaces, right? The reduction, of breaches, reduce downtime, reduce cost. Yes, something might cost you $10,000, but a breach is going to cost you $20,000. It's going to cost you reputation. It's going to be more in fines if you do nothing. Some of it's pretty small investments dramatically improve security posture. That's true, right? Compliance. Anybody work for their company do business with a government agency, right? Are you doing the CMMC, right? And how much of a pain is that? An unbelievable amount of pain. Which CMMC are you doing?
I believe it's just we have 3 companies that are going through it, and they're all kind of just starting doing the whole CMMC.
Is it level 1?
Yeah, level 1 for 2 is level 1, and I think the 3rd is level 2.
Right? These sort of compliance requirements, right, they're coming. And without saying too much, have a customer that needs to, through a friend of mine, have a customer who needs to do this and they're not doing it. And there's a bunch of, you're going to lose business. You're a multi-million-dollar company, but you're acting like you're a $10,000 company. You're acting like a small company, but if you want to lose half your customers or $2 million worth of business, then don't do it. But you want to gain market share, then do it. I had a customer, they were a debt collector, and and this isn't really sensitive, they're a debt collector. And one of their customers was Citizens Bank, which is owned by RBS. Well, RBS or Citizens Bank was compromised because of a vendor. And who's in trouble in this case? Anybody know who's going to get them in the most trouble in a situation where I'm the data owner, I'm the company, and I hire this company to do work for me, and they get compromised, which affects me?
Yeah, historically, it's always the business.
It's the business, it's the data owner, it's the one hiring out. So they got their hands slapped and they said, and they went through their investigation. They said, you're not doing enough on your third-party risk. So what did they do? Hired about 20 people to go do third-party risk assessments, handed them a piece of paper and said, go do third-party risks on all our customers. And the debt collection agency had me doing their cybersecurity program. And they would complain about cost all the time, where they were trying, complaining about how much things cost, blah, blah, blah. But they were gaining market share. Their competitor, so I don't know if you know, banks like Citizens only give about 10 to 15% of their debt collection to any one company. So they probably have, in that case, 10, right? For 8 or 9 or 10 companies that they distribute their debt collection stuff to. So when you get those phone calls after the 5th time you haven't answered, Citizens Bank of paying the debt, then they write it off, they get their money, and they hand it to a debt collection agency for a penny on the dollars. They own that now, or some of them say, we'll collect this much, we get paid, whatever their thing is. So then you get a phone call from debt collection company. They only hand about 10 to 15% of that business off to each organization. This woman was gaining market share over her customers because they had us come in, build their security program for them, sit during the audits, and they were, within the second time they would come in and say, yeah, you guys are good, you guys are doing it right, and it would be a very easy process. And then she basically didn't want to spend the money anymore and got out of the business herself. But she was gaining market share because of some of the minimal things we were doing for her. We weren't doing everything that I just spoke about, but the policies and procedures, some of the security practices we put in place, it met their criteria. So they had nowhere else to go. They didn't want to go out and find new vendors. She went from 10 to 15 to 20 to 25% of the market share just from that one large bank. But couldn't help herself when it came to how much money she was actually dishing out for our services. So, well, thank you. Let's secure our modern workplace. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the presentation. And, I challenge anybody in the room, if you have the time, take Jim's slide deck, which you're going to share. Take Jim's slide deck and compare it against any of the frameworks out there. He just provided a very high-level overview of a great, not only frameworks to keep your businesses secure, but he gave examples of each of the tool sets and processes as well. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
And you've been sort of every slide and every topic, you've been dancing around the idea of preparation, right? Do the work ahead of time as opposed to having the problem later, right? That's the gist of it. And a lot of you know I volunteer with feds, and we've had this conversation over and over. Working in preparation is a lot better than working in panic after the fact, right? So having all of this in place as much as you can, as much as is feasible for your business model, is a good idea. So I appreciate that.
And having conversation with the person who holds the purse strings is not the easiest. They don't want it. They don't want to spend the money. They've had this idea. They're making money. They bought a new house. They bought a new car, and now, like the customer we have with the CMMC, they want to hold back. Well, it's gonna bite them at some point. Whether their customer says, where's, we need your, CMMC certification, and they say, we don't have it, well, we're gonna have to find a new vendor. They have no other choice than to find a new vendor. So.
Any questions for Jim? All right, sir,
Well,
thank you very much.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Your time and effort. Hopefully today, it's a long car. Hopefully today, we've given you a more complete and holistic understanding of how AI is used in cyber defense and what current industry is doing with that, how to secure your remote business with some simple steps to follow through on, some examples to look up later if you're interested in any of those particular items. I'm sure Mr. Baker, like you said, he's on LinkedIn, he's available to you all. And Adriana, who had to leave for a family issue, she's a great cybersecurity resource for recruiting and jobs and any kind of questions about the marketplace. She's asked already to come back out to some of our meetups. So she's got an open invite to come back. Our next meetup probably won't be until late January at this point because of the holiday season and the college schedules that we're all working through. But you're all invited. I will send out those emails to you all. And keep an eye on the springfieldcce.org website. Keep an eye on the LinkedIn resource page. That's usually the most active communication we have because it's easy to post something out there as opposed to finding all the emails and sending them out without getting spammed, right? So appreciate everybody's time. I hope you gained something from this. If anybody has any questions, you want to sit around and network, you're hungry still, you want to grab some more food, feel free. And to the people out on online, appreciate you being with us today. And when this goes out and gets published, I will, answer any questions that you might have out there. Feel free to email me. And I thank Austin and Kaya for helping us with media support today, and Austin for the tech support, and Professor Alvis for being here with us, and some of the alumni. I appreciate you guys all being here, and have a good day. Thanks.